The National Economic Council on Thursday asked President Bola Tinubu to withdraw the tax reforms bill from the National Assembly to allow for wider consultations and consensus building. This was after the President and the Federal Executive Council had endorsed new policy initiatives to streamline Nigeria's tax administration's processes. Now, well, though the federal government says the new laws are meant to actually enhance efficiency and eliminate redundancies across the nation's tax operations, at an earlier meeting, as we saw on October 28, 2024, governors of the 19 northern states, under the platform of the Northern Governors Forum, rejected the new derivation-based model for value-added tax distribution in the new tax reform bills. Now, why did they actually reject that bill? We have our guest on the show this morning, Liberos Oshoma, who's a lawyer, to help us give perspective to this and, of course, help answer some of the questions as regards the reservation that these Northern governors have. Liberos, thank you so much for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Thank you.
Now, the idea was for a new tax policy that streamlines Nigeria's tax administration processes with, areas around tax harmonization, a proposal for an increase to 15% from 7.5%, and equitable revenue distribution, amongst other things. First, what do you make of this particular bill?
Yeah, first and foremost, while it is appropriate for us to streamline our tax regulation bill and then also find a way of ensuring that those states that are paying taxes will actually benefit in terms of derivation. But there's also need for Nigerian government to look, deeply. It is not enough in terms of increasing the VAT from 7.5 to 15%. It's not enough to, want to just increase taxes. There's need also for government to cut costs in terms of the high cost of governance. So I think these are areas. And then the implementation, really. It's always very convenient for us to say, yes, we want to find a way, to accommodate those states that are generating the tax revenue. But also in doing that, there's need for us as a people to look at the modalities for implementing any new tax policy, so that at the end, it doesn't look like this subsidy is gone thing that was not properly thought through. But no matter how beautiful the policy is, it wasn't properly thought through. So because of the landmines and the loopholes inherent in the bill, I think the intervention and governors, would seem germane, even though the excuses by the northern governors that the federal government is trying to impoverish, some other states is not are not excusable because for taxes, you need to find a way to create an enabling environment to have people not just in the tax dragnet, but to have people or companies who can actually generate and pay taxes. So that excuse by the northern governors is not something that should be. It's not really the major reason why I would advocate for, a holistic approach, by the federal government, like Makinde has said, but largely because of implementation. And as we go further, I will give you my reasons. Because implementation of this new tax policy, it's going to affect both the government and the stakeholders. The federal inland revenue also will be affected. They will need to deploy technologies. Yeah. The companies also, will also deploy technologies. And this is practically what we're trying to copy is a Canadian tax model. And so you will need time actually to study, the model. So you don't just implement it at the end. It ends up creating more bottleneck. And then also penalties should be involved. If you look at the bill, really, it did not take a holistic approach to addressing, all of those challenges. That's why I think it is timely. That intervention by the Economic Council is timely to give a break or to pause the bill to allow wider consultation, better understanding, and spell out clearer modalities for implementation.
Okay, so before we even, talk about implementation and the reservation that the northern governors have, let's even look at the excuse or the reason, let's not say excuse, of the federal government. And they said that the new laws are meant to enhance efficiency and eliminate redundancies. We've seen a lot of bottlenecks and multiple taxation in the tax regime in the country. But then, do you buy that reason? Do you think at the end of the day, whether or not this is achieved, or let's just say if this is eventually achieved, it would actually enhance fiscal efficiency on the part of governments? Of course, looking at distribution also.
Even with the current law that we are operating, if it is properly, if the tax law is properly implemented, it will still enhance efficiency. But what is dynamic about laws is what is good about law, it's dynamism. It changes with the tide of time. And so if there are new innovation, then you find a way of amending your laws. And this also, it's a timely intervention, considering the, the suit of Rivers State and the Lagos State government, during the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, where they had, because this issue of VAT had consistently been a struggle between the state government and the federal government on who should actually collect taxes, VAT. But like I said, the Canadian model is akin to what we have. The federal government will collect and then share on the basis of derivation equally. But the mode of collection is also very key. I think it is not just enough for government to say that it will enhance efficiency. Government in itself has created a lot of loopholes and bottlenecks for wastages. Government has not been able to plug those loopholes. And so just increasing taxes alone will not, on itself, will not enhance efficiency.
Yeah.
Let's give an example with, you will find that when the state government were talking about VAT collections, that the principles of derivation and that the state government should collect VAT. Some of the questions that were raised were technology, VAT paid on this kind of technology that you and I are using. I am here in Kigali, Rwanda, and you are in Lagos. And so some of this technology, VAT paid on it. The state government, by virtue of the constitution, by virtue of the exclusive legislative list, do not have powers to collect VAT on such items. So those VAT, if the state government insists on collecting it, the state government will lose those VAT. It will go strictly to the federal government. So that's why it was necessary, the political solution was necessary for the federal government to collect. But then, in collecting it, how do you trace, which state the VAT is accruable to? The case of the telecoms companies, for example, a call is generated from lakes, and then the base station is, in another place, and then the head office of the telecommunication is in Lagos or in Abuja, and the case of banks also. So when you put all of these things together, where is the vatable tax applicable? Which state is the vatable tax applicable to? So all of these, the companies will need to deploy technology to be able to trace this such of VAT. So it is not us, and even the Federal Land Revenue needs such technology to trace, such VAT. So it is not just enough, because when people look at this VAT, they look at the consumptions of alcohol alone and say, oh, look, you can't forbid alcohol in the north while you're collecting VAT from alcohol. It's not just VAT on alcohol that, if it's just alcohol, it will become a very simple issue to deal with. But it's gone beyond alcohol. It's, you have a lot of technology that had been deployed. And I talk about telecommunications, for example. I talk about banking. Even importation of vehicles. Yeah. Considering the fact also that the states are not, the federal government resources are not equally deployed across state board. Take ports, for example, port of entry. So all of these issues are the challenges that the government generally and those companies are going to have. At the end of the day, we might even be worse off than we are today, and then people will not comply with it. So that's why it's not just enough to say it will reduce redundancy on the part of government. Government also is very redundant in this approach.
Okay,
for them, it's just about tax increase. Sorry, quickly.
I understand.
For government, it shouldn't just be about tax increase. It should also be about implementation of the policies.
Yeah, we'll still talk about implementation, but then let's do a further breakdown so that people have an understanding of what we're actually talking about in terms of allocation and tax payments. Now, under the current law, VAT is allocated in a 50% and 35% split to the federal government, state governments, including the FCT and local governments. Now, for the portion attributable to the states, they are to retain 20% of the VAT revenue collected within their borders. 30% of it is distributed based on the population of the states, while the remaining 50% is shared equally among all states. So from what you're saying now and what the new bill brings, which actually focuses on the consumption or the usage of the services and goods that would actually, speak to what is being paid in terms of taxes, not the production aspect, would you now want or call or probably support the abolishment of this current tax regime or tax model and embrace the derivation? Or you would say this derivation-based model, should just be somewhere by the side and we should just roll with what we have currently to avoid issues?
No. What we have currently is obsolete, really.
Okay.
The derivation-based model encourages states to work hard. But like I said, implementation is very key. You need to look at, it's not just enough to talk about derivation, and then when you talk about derivation, because the increase from 20% derivation to 60% derivation is a welcome development, is encouraging. The decrease from 15% sharing revenue formula to 10% also is encouraging. But the question here, like I said, is how do you now determine the derivations of 60%? How do you determine that derivation? Outside of alcohol, I gave you issues, questions of technology, and then even talk about importation. So the concern by the northern governors, as germane as they are, if the tax law, the tax bill is properly harnessed and technology is deployed, it will be a win-win for everybody. And then also it will eliminate this clamor by some states who believes that they are working so hard for others to benefit. And then it will also help some states to sit up. It will, like government has said, it will also discourage redundancy by some states. But there must also need to be penalties for default. What should be the penalties for default? That's why, like I said, it shouldn't be in a hurry. The government should not be in a hurry to pass the law and then push it down the throat. And then those people that will suffer it the most will be the ordinary people who are already impoverished, whose tax VAT will be increased from 7.5% to 15%, while implementation of the derivation and all of that will still be the way that we're doing it. And then some companies will even be confused. Having, to quickly, immediately, if a win opportunity is not given, having to find a way to deploy technology for the purpose of meeting up with the tax requirement, that also will further impoverish the company and put a strain on them. So at the end of the day, what is supposed to be a gain for government might end up being an albatross that will lead, to a quagmire that the government, if not properly thought of, will create a bottleneck. So that's why I think that, yes, we agree that the current policy should be changed. It largely encourages redundancy. Take, for example, you have mineral resources in certain states that are being mined illegally. Because once these companies that are operating in these places are under the cover of darkness, at the end of the day, the tax that are supposed to be accruable as profit from these goods and services that are being mined illegally are wasted. So these states do not have the benefit of this tax that is supposed to, the VAT that's supposed to accrue from these resources. Why some states, like Rivers State, for example, like
and Lagos State too,
will feel the burden of mineral resources from their domain that are not illegally being mined. So I agree, but like I said, it is not just all about those mineral resources that we see. There are goods and services that we do not see that transcend states. And so how do you trap the VAT on those services? And where does the VAT go to? That's where the main challenge is. And like I said, if not properly handled, it might create the kind of bottleneck that we are having with forests now, and the same bottleneck that we're having with petroleum products, the PMS. And it will further, rather than improve the lives of Nigeria by putting more money in government pockets, to further impoverish the people.
Okay, so from what you said, liberals, it's all about the interpretation, the implementation of this tax regime, and of course the deployment of technology to actually track what is to be paid and by whom, or who will be paying that. A couple of people have actually said that the Nigerian government should give about 2 years for the understudy of this particular new system to see how it would work efficiently before it is eventually implemented. So we hope they will take all this into strides, because at the end of the day, it's what benefits the people that one should focus on more than how it benefits the government.
Look at quickly. I know time is not our friend.
Yes.
Quickly. Quickly. Look at when the new currencies were introduced in England. It gave them a window of 2 years.
Yes.
When you are introducing, a policy such as this, there's need for a window also. 2 years, 2 to 3 years should be enough for company to adopt to the new model.
System,
like I had said, for those that are going to pay the tax to adopt to the new model. For the government, the federal government also, the federal government revenue body, to also deploy tax to trace who actually, where the VAT is traceable to. So at the end of the day, people do not default. So there's really a need for a window.
I understand. Liberals, we might just have to hang that conversation there, but then, we have an understanding of what this is all about and what you've said. Liberals Oshoma, a lawyer, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the show. Appreciate that.